Welcome to Cinemagna. In today's video, we will showcase the behind-the-scene footage of the 2021 movie titled Belfast. Make sure to like the video and subscribe to our channel to be notified when new videos are released. Belfast, written and directed by Academy Award nominee Kenneth Branagh, is the humorous, tender, and profoundly personal narrative of one boy's life amid the tumultuous late 1960s in Branagh's hometown. Belfast is a film based on Branagh's personal experiences. A 9-year-old boy must navigate his way to adulthood in a world that is turned on its head. His secure and supportive neighborhood, as well as everything he thought he knew about life, has been irreparably altered, but joy, laughing, music, and the formative magic of the movies have not. The cast includes Golden Globe winner Caitrona Balfe, Academy Award winner Judi Dench, Jamie Dornan, Ciarán Hinds, and Jude Hill, who is 10 years old. Dench and Hinds play the quick-witted grandparents, while Dornan and Balfe play a passionate working-class couple caught up in the chaos. Branagh, Laura Berwick, Becca Kovacik, and Tamar Thomas are producing the project. Production designer Jim Clay, director of photography Horace Zambarlakos, hair and makeup artist Wakana Yoshihara, editor Yuna Nai Donghill, costume designer Charlotte Walker, and casting directors Lucy Bevan and Emily Brockman are among the usual Branagh collaborators behind the camera. Van Morrison, a Belfast native, composed the music. In the summer of 1969, a 9-year-old named Buddy knows exactly who he is and where he belongs. He's from North Belfast's working class, happy, loved, and safe. His world is a fast-paced, hilarious street life, lived out loud in the middle of a community that laughs and sticks together, where your extended family lives on the same street, and it's hard to get lost since, at least on the surface, everyone in Belfast knows everyone else. And in every spare minute, in the darkness of movie theaters and in front of the television, Buddy's inner existence and dreams are transported and intoxicated by American cinema and television. The dog days of August, however, convert Buddy's childhood hopes into a nightmare as the 1960s draw to a close, even as man stands on the moon itself. Simmering societal unrest erupts in Buddy's own street and quickly escalates. A masked assailant first, then a riot, and finally a citywide battle, with religion stoking the flames even deeper. Catholics and Protestants, once friendly neighbors, have evolved into deadly rivals. Buddy must make sense of the mayhem and frenzy, as well as this new physical environment of lockdown, which is populated by heroes and villains previously only seen on the big screen, but now threatens to upend everything he knows and loves as an epic battle rages in his own backyard. His mother is struggling to make ends meet while his father works in England to support the family. The law of vigilance is in effect, and innocent lives are at risk. Buddy has spent hours in front of westerns like High Noon and The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, so he knows what to expect from his heroes. But can his father be the hero Buddy needs? Will his mother put her past behind her in order to save her family's future? How can he keep his adored grandparents? And how can he love the girl of his dreams if he can't love her? Buddy's gripping, amusing, heartbreaking journey through riots, bloodshed, the joys and sorrows of familial connections, and the anguish of first love, all accompanied by the dancing, music, and laughter that only the Irish can muster when the world turns upside down, holds the answers. Without much further ado, enjoy the behind-the-scenes video.
And background action. And action.
Have you wrote to Santa yet?
He has, but Santa's explained that there's not that much money this year, so
Sure,
not to
Santa
expect
has
too
plenty
much.
of surplus if you talk to the people in the know. Your health is all you need for a Christmas present.
So, everybody having a great time. It's fun playing in the back alley. Here we go. And action!
Hey, buddy! You're
Cheerio, Daddy.
Cheerio, buddy. Be good. If you can't be good, be careful.
Do they all do that? But it was quite unusual then. I guess everybody does that, but now and then it was just it made me laugh. Somebody was dressed like, is he being filmed or something?
See then, it's not going to be breaking the code. I'm a Catholic. Wrong. That's exactly what they think you will say. They think you're trying to bluff them. Shh. What? You say I'm a Protestant. But I am a Protestant. That's the point.
That's it.
You can tell them by their names, Chloe. Well, if he's a Patrick or a Shaw, he's a Catholic. And if he's a Billy or a William, he's a Protestant. There's more names than that, though. I know that. I'm just saying. Time's the order. What about Morris? We've a wee fella down our street called Thomas. What's he? Protestant, definitely. He's not. He's a Catholic.
Tell you what would be good this morning, around 5. I'll give you one. Start with give us basically a rectangle, and then what bigger rectangle? I need special. So the other side.
So particularly Buddy, you want to watch this man and this woman and this lady here. So basically just kind of keep pushing. And this is where we...
I'm ready to start marking this so that this shot plays. You know, we like to play long, clear, drop, wow, if they go.
Yeah, safe on the box.
Unless the class. You stop and look at that.
Yeah, because they're one of the shelves, like all the things inside the door. And then I'm like, ooh.
I know, you did great. You did well.
Stop. Where do you think you're going, love?
To bring my husband home. He's on the other side there.
Where's he been then?
None of your bloody business.
Not with you in your hour of need? That's a bit off, isn't it?
He works away in England.
Does he? What kind of work is that?
He's a joiner.
I see. And has he joined any of these groups, making all this mess in your street?
A joiner. That's a carpenter in your bloody language, and I just told you he was away last night.
That was handy. Perhaps you knew you'd be okay, that you wouldn't be targeted.
He knows nothing about the whole bloody thing. He's here to be with his family.
Glad to hear it, madam.
Be Marco.
And one quick smile.
I play Ma, who is this wonderful, quite complex woman. I mean, I think she's very much the master of her own domain, and in this quite tight-knit community, she's a force to be reckoned with, and she can pretty much handle anything. But I do think that she has limitations in certain ways, and I think that that's a product of her upbringing. I think she struggles to sort of see past this little patch that she knows so well. And I think that this idea that the world is changing around her installs her with a lot of fear. Because, you know, I think that she's great at what she knows, but anything beyond that, it kind of terrifies her a little bit. Well, when I read the script, she felt very familiar to me. I mean, she feels there's a certain ferocity to Irish women and Irish mammies in particular, and that kind of tough love, but that kind of like quick to laugh, quick to anger. All of those things felt very familiar. I read it and I just fell in love with it. And then I had a Zoom call with Ken, which was a first for me. And we sort of read through some scenes and had a lovely chat, and then it all happened very quickly. It was sort of like, okay, it's happening and they want to see you in a week and a half, I think it was, or something. And then next thing you know, we were down in Ascot. But yeah, it's just been such an amazing process, and the project's been so special, and I feel very grateful that I've been able to be a part of it. I mean, it kind of evokes so much. I mean, there's moments that are really funny, but quite frankly, it made me quite, I don't know whether melancholic is the right word. I mean, I sobbed, you know. I think I left Ireland when I was 18, and I haven't moved back. And so that whole idea of getting to a point in your life where you look back and you look back at your childhood and you look back at the place and the people that made you who you are, that resonated very deeply with me. And I definitely got very emotional because I thought a lot about, you know, where I grew up and having left there. And I thought a lot about my grandparents and, you know, as a child, how our families, I think this is probably true for everyone. You know, when you're younger, you see all your cousins all the time and you see all your aunts and uncles. And, you know, I definitely come from a very, very large families, but they were very tight knit. And as time has gone on, you see them less and less. And yeah, it's such a beautiful script. I mean, I think Ken wrote just a beautiful, beautiful script, and it was just very, very powerful. It was amazing. Ken is just wonderful to work with. He's one of the most patient and generous and fun people to be around. You know, obviously this film is very personal for him, and you could just feel the love that he had, you know, for everyone he has written about, for the compassion he has for everybody that he's written about. And then as an actor, you know, to have a director who understands so well what it's like to try and give moments, and, you know, his compassion and his patience with an actor, and he never shows his stress. I mean, to me, I do think it's a love letter to childhood and to that absolutely wonderful moment where you see everything through such a fantastical lens, and the beauty in that, and also the pain when that is, you know, that innocence is somewhat lost. You know, to be a child at that age and to see the world around you change so drastically, I can't imagine how difficult that must have been, and how that must have flipped his world around. But to be able to take that experience and turn it into something that has so much joy and so much love, and yet, you know, still retain some of that fear. And, you know, I've thought about that, and first of all, I think this film is for everyone. And I'm so excited for my nieces and nephews and for my parents to see it. You know, I think it's going to touch people on all across the spectrum. But I think the thing to take away is how important love and family and community is, and the danger of when we let politics divide us and separate us. You know, there's beauty in our differences, and I think to retain that love of community, I think that's really special, and how absolutely awful it is when that gets torn apart. Yeah, I think, you know, I think family is so important as part of the Irish culture. I think a lot of people come from also very big families, myself included. And, you know, you're always sort of taught growing up that family is so important and that you look out for each other. And it's yeah, I think it's something that's quite beautiful about the way we live in Ireland. It's that you really, you know, you create these, you have your families, but you also create these extended families in your community with your neighbours and, you know, the people in your village or the people on your street. It's such an integral part of the Irish psyche, I think. Yeah, I mean, it's so funny because when I read the script, obviously, you know, it alludes to musical numbers and there's some moments in it, but you know, often when you read a script like that, it's like for a second and then they cut to something else. And so I didn't really take in how much singing and dancing there would be. And also nobody really asked me if I could do either. So I was like, oh, well, obviously it's not an issue. So I was quite surprised on our first day when I knew there was going to be a little bit of singing, but when they sent us to choreography sort of lesson, Jamie and I were like, wait, what, we're dancing? But it's been wonderful. It's something I never thought I was ever going to do. And I've had to, you know, get over quite a bit of fear of it. But I think, as always, when you do something like that, I have just loved it. And it's been so much fun. It's just been such a fun, lovely project. And everybody has been so wonderful. And it's been so lovely. Little Jude is amazing. And to see him do his little, you know, song and everything has been so lovely. And Will is so lovely. Just everyone's so great. So,
well, I'm playing Pop, who is the grandfather in the story. The protagonist, young Buddy, is 9 years of age, and he's my grandson. And I guess this being Ken's memory of his own grandparents, is cast Judi Dench and myself as Pop and Granny, which is a huge thrill for me. I don't know about how she feels about it, but I'm absolutely delighted to have Dame Judi Dench as my missus. Long-suffering as she may be in this role, because Pop was very interesting. He's called Pop as the grandfather. He's you know, he's a working class man who's never really pushed himself, never really got on. He was an ex-miner. He went over to England to work the coal mines in the in late 40s, 50s, because, as I remember, the wages in England were much higher, even if they weren't that much, than they were in the north of Ireland at that time. So people sometimes left the north of Ireland to go and work in England and come back once a month to be back with the family, but maybe bring more money in to help run the house. And Pop did that for many years. So the relationship between Pop and his wife, Granny, Lizzie, as she is, she's long-suffering, I think. She's suffered that he wasn't a man who actually took the house and took the responsibility and actually raised them up from where they were. And she held on to the purse strings quite tightly, and he was always just trying to eke out a little in that kind of old-style manly way. And he's very devoted to her. I think he needs her. You know, they've been, from childhood, they've been sweethearts, but she could maybe see the back of him, but he wouldn't be able to survive without her. And I was there when suddenly I got a call to say, the work was further from my head. I was having a gorgeous soft time in Lyon, actually, by the rivers, and then this call came out of the blue to say that Ken was making a film and he would like you to play his grandfather in it, and maybe you could talk to him about it. It was so out of the blue, because Ken and I think we've only met twice, and for like 2 minutes at a time in the 40 years we've been working. We've never moved in the same circle. So to hear that he was going to offer me a job was a huge thrill. This script, which was so delicate and soft and warm and funny, and with the backdrop of the shit hitting the fan and all the trouble starting in 1969, and the violence and the burning out of homes and people on the run, and yet inside this, it's very much as I remember, the warmth of people and family, and that's really at the heart of this story. I've never worked with Judi, but I've seen her so many times being brilliant, and I've heard a lot of stories about her being quite, I don't know what the word is, maybe naughty or cheeky, whatever, just around the set, but brilliant. We see how brilliant she is, and actually go and throw myself at her as her old man was more than thrilling. And then they throw in one of the most handsome men in town, Jamie Dornan, for his son. So, you know, we've got to back up. And then he happens to marry this beautiful and hugely talented Caitrona Balfe. And we're quite the family. We're not smug about it. Naturally, Ken is able to, you know, he's so brilliant, he's so quick, he's so sharp, so intelligent, there's such, as far as I can see, vast reserves of knowledge. He's able to put them into practice economically and with a speed that allows things to keep ticking over. And yet, at the same time, he's able to find warmth, camaraderie, time for a little fun. But meanwhile, this extraordinary discipline is moving everything in the right direction. And it's great to be around that because it puts you at your ease. It's never sometimes in front of camera. It can be tetchy and dangerous, difficult. People listen. This is just allowing things to happen. This young fellow that they found called Jude Hill. It's funny sometimes when you see people with all these gifts and talents, and then there's this little blonde fellow of 10 years of age with little freckles and a sweet open face, and yet with this wonderful seriousness he has, and this instant access to humor or a joke, and his openness, and suddenly you go like, this is extraordinary. This is like a young Ken Branagh, actually in the flesh. Not me, but this is it. This seems to be it. And I don't know how they found somebody like this. Somebody's done an awful lot of work. And then to watch Ken work with him, never once telling him what to do, just suggesting or asking him questions, seeing how he finds it, and letting him develop his own thoughts at 9 or 10 to how he feels about the situation. To try and catch that on camera. It's quite wonderful to watch, to be around that.
I play Pa, who is father to Buddy and Will, and husband to Ma, played by Caitrona Balfe. And I think Pa is ultimately a really good person trying to do right by his family, and he's like everyone in Northern Ireland at the time is sort of forced into this very difficult position of trying to make big life decisions that benefit the family and try to get through these very severe times that are happening around Belfast in 1969. But ultimately, he's trying to do the right thing for his young family, and so he works in the building trade as a joiner, and a lot of his work is bringing him over to England already. So then, when there's the opportunity to escape all the troubles that are happening in the north of Ireland, he takes an opportunity and tries to help his family. I sort of didn't base him. I mean, you know, I have the luxury of being from Belfast and having a father from Belfast and uncles from Belfast, and you know, lots of men in my life and my mates' fathers, and you know, I feel like I've got a pretty good grasp. I mean, there's definitely elements of his character that I kind of associated with people that have been in my life in some way growing up, and yeah, I felt like I had a little bit of a head start with that in terms of shaping Pa, because I know what a man from Belfast is pretty well, and so that was helpful. I get a sort of text from my agent saying, Kenneth Branagh would like to talk to you about something. Are you free tomorrow? It's like, you don't get those texts very often, you know. And I was thinking, great, he wants me to be, you know, an extra in a movie or something, and I'll definitely talk to him about that. So they sent the script, I think maybe that evening. It all happened very fast, and then suddenly I read this script. As soon as I saw the title, Belfast, I thought, oh, hold on a second, this could be something really, really interesting. Not very often you get a script sent, then the title is your hometown, and it's with such esteemed people involved in it, like Ken. So read the script straight away, and I think the next day I spoke to Ken on a sort of FaceTime call, and just instantly, as I imagined I would, was sort of connected to him and saw how much this material and being from Belfast meant to him, and obviously being from Belfast means a lot to me also, so being able to riff off him in terms of talking about what that feels like, you know, I felt a lot of pride, you know. Ken's amazing at sort of bringing out all the core goodness of people from home, you know, and no matter what side of the divide you're on, and no matter what people have gone through back home, we have always, I think, I'm slightly biased, but I think we are in the north of Ireland, you know, we sort of insert humour into everything, and we try to see the best in every situation. I think maybe in all of Ireland it's like that too, you know, it's an island that has gone through a lot of pretty rough situations over centuries, and hasn't always been treated that well, let's say, and haven't treated each other that well, let's say that also. And I think we've had to sort of use humour to sort of combat that and get through those situations. So I think Ken really drew out that humour from the people there, which I really respected. But it's a joyful script in many respects, considering the very troubling aspects of what's happening and the backdrop of what is starting to happen in Belfast at that time, and the fractions that are starting to occur, and the division and the uproar and the violence. There is still humour, and there's people trying to live their lives and make these decisions. I mean, I think it's in the best way, it's difficult to describe. I think it is kind of, Ken and I were talking about this on set the other day, about how I think it's going to serve so many people. You know, I do think like everyone in the family could watch this and get something from it, again, because it's joyful, but it's there's heartbreak in there, there's big themes, there's big decisions, there's leaving a life behind, but it's also funny. I think it's funny. You know, I think there's loads of humour in it, you know. I think it's sort of got this strain of like this very relatable sort of empathy throughout it, you know, and these decisions that are being made that I think any family can imagine themselves in these situations, trying to make these decisions that are really tough, and leaving a whole life, the only life you know, and leaving that behind. I mean, it must have been brutal to make those decisions then. And so not only have I not really worked with an actor as a director before, I've never worked with an actor who's such an actor, such a powerhouse of an actor, such a respected, you know, lauded actor. And I've loved every second of it. And the benefit of that are so many and plentiful. But my favorite aspect of working with an actor as a director is he is so mindful of where your head's at all times as an actor. The day before a big scene, of course, the day of a big scene, the day after a big scene, he's so cognizant of where you are in your head, because a lot of us as actors, we're often in our head about stuff, and we're worried about how things are going to play out. And you know, the day before, we had a relatively complicated scene, and the day before, Ken was sort of, I mean, how do you want to play it tomorrow? Would you rather we started wide and came in, worked up towards your close-up, or would you rather just straight off the bat do your close-up and get that when the energy's fresh in the morning? Directors don't ask you those sort of questions a lot of the time. You know, you just sort of turn up and they're doing it their way, and you just fall in line, you know? So that aspect of it I've loved. And
my character is Ken Branagh's grandmother, who lived in Belfast, and lived in a terrace house in Belfast, and was there all during this time, and obviously adores her grandson, and is very fond of her husband, where they have a kind of, you know, sparky kind of relationship. I got a message once saying, Ken is in a meeting and he wants to drive over and ask you about a part that's coming up. I said, tell him to just stay at the meeting. The answer is yes. And that is absolutely not even a made-up story. He came and read the script to me, because I can't read anymore now, so I have to use other methods of learning and things. And we didn't have a pause, and he started at the beginning and he read the entire script through. I don't think I suppose I must have breathed, But it is just, I thought, sensationally written. And it's a time that I remember very well indeed. I mean, my family were in Dublin, but I had an uncle in Belfast at the time. So there were lots of things I remembered very, very well about it. I mean, the thing about Kenny is that he actually has everything so marvelously prepared that there's never any waiting around and you just get on, you do it and things. But for him, this must have been very, very personal indeed. And there was a moment when he read it to me that he just stopped. And then went on. And I think that, the remembrance of it all must be very, very sharp to him. No, I would say it's a very, very personal remembrance of that time when he was a small boy. A lot of people will be reminded of a lot of things. Jude and Lewis, well, I think I'll just hang around till they grow up. Gosh, what really a sensational voice. I don't know how that little one, he's got a natural inbred sensibility and sense to everything, sensitiveness. He's I mean, I could dry quite a lot of the times just for the fact that I'm looking at him, see this wonderful, bright face. Nothing seems to faze him. Nothing at all. He's just adorable. We've only done one scene with Lewis, actually, when he sat with his feet up on the sofa, and his mother says, "We'll take your feet down on the sofa." But I don't know where Ken found the two of them. But what a stroke of luck.
Belfast is a city of stories, and particularly at the end of the 1960s, it went through an incredible, tumultuous phase in its history. Very dramatic, sometimes very violent, and I and my family were part of that. And it was always, for me, a story of our time in that city that would come to the surface when thinking about writing something about Ireland, that period in Belfast. There was always a story about the point in anybody's life, male or female, where there is a sort of crossover into the world of adulthood, where innocence is lost and where new responsibilities, sometimes new worries, are found. And that moment, capturing that moment of crossover, which is, in this case, in Belfast in 1969, was slightly accelerated by the events around us all. A very recognizable, intimate, small family group in a threatened, stressful situation with some big life choices. And not epic in the grand sense of some sort of historical, biopic, but in the lives of the people involved, enormous decisions, titanic, decisions for the families, and people recognized that, I think. There was some sort of connection to the basic sort of family dynamics that were at play, but there was an immense sense of gratitude that we could tell any kind of story. The story is told through the eyes of a 9-10-year-old boy, and this is a 9-10-year-old boy who already was watching a lot of television and a lot of films and starting to filter experience through other imaginative encounters with stories. And one of the things that we explore is the idea of how many Westerns were to be seen on the television back then, and how much of a Western town Belfast could seem. When I wrote the script, I actually did feel I was writing a Western, and one that was sort of constructed in the mind of the 10-year-old Buddy. I've been very pleased that lots of people who are in it and people who've seen it since we've been working on it have talked about a sense of authenticity in the way people talk. So I think that centre of it, I think, is something that is very literal and accurate. You know, the language of the time, the way people behaved in terms of their leisure time, the extended family sing-songs, people out in the parks, you know, the sense that the whole sort of street sort of played and worked together. There are good and bad things about that. Sometimes people knew way too much about, you know, what was going on to be comfortable at all times. But if it takes a village to raise a child, this was a great sort of advert for it. So that side of it is all accurate. Jude Hill, you know, does an excellent job in the film, and who we seem to find at a moment where his talent was ready to both blossom at the same time as Jude himself was in the best possible way ordinarily enjoying himself as a 10-year-old boy. So football for him in the film and on the streets was as important and enjoyable as making the movie. We wanted that. We didn't want somebody who was suddenly decided they were a big movie star. But at the same time, he was very serious, very prepared, very open, very flexible. Somehow you need this curious combination. Could you just be yourself, and also could you make all these tiny adjustments I'm asking you to do that you know might be difficult for an actor with many decades of experience? And in the process of him doing the latter, you don't want to change him from the beautiful original. As always, those who surround him, families, and in this case colleagues on the film, become critical. They're critical influences, and in this case they were so wise and compassionate, and he himself is you know, kind of older than his years, a quality that is great for the part, and he turned out to be a real winner for us. My approach with younger actors is to treat them as if they were much older, certainly respect them entirely, and also respect if they have some intuitive way that they might like to work. Some people respond to lots of words, some people don't. Some people like it to be a game the whole time. Some people need to be encouraged to do a bit more homework, and we probably encourage that a bit more. Jude's mum, Shawneen, was very, very good at preparing him with lines, and we made it very clear how vital it was to know the lines very well, quite a long way ahead of the day you might do them, because the dates might change. You might suddenly be doing it tomorrow, and if your effort in the morning is just about remembering the lines, you're not going to be as good as if you knew them, had forgotten them, and now could just be with them. And he seemed to understand that. Well, we wanted a level of authenticity. So Jamie Dornan is a real Belfast boy. He's just outside Belfast in Holywood, County Down, and Ciarán Hinds, who plays Pop, was brought up a mile from where I lived, so we practically could have shouted at each other from house to house. Caitrona Balfe is from the south of Ireland, but has a great understanding of the sort of vernacular Irish extended family life. And then Judi Dench, who has a lot of Irish blood in her, is the thoroughbred who can sort of do anything and attracts many actors because they so want to work with her. With Jude, with Jamie, with Ciarán, we had such a deep level of authenticity and understanding that any gaps that Judi needed plugged in, that they could provide with their knowledge and their ability to understand certain kinds of situations. But Judi is so meticulous in her research that she brought that anyway. And then we had a chance, we've worked with many people over the years from Northern Ireland, from Belfast, so we got a chance to work with people we had sometimes, we're now so old that we'd given prizes to various people who ended up in the, as younger actors who ended up in the film a little bit older. It just needed particularly to sound Irish, but we also needed people who could do that and be very clear as well, because sometimes the Northern Irish accent can be something that a larger world takes a moment to catch on to, and we didn't want to have that time delay, so you needed authenticity and clarity, and this group of actors gave it, plus a sort of sense of energy, real sort of front-footed energy that I liked. There was an outgoing quality that meant they became a family very quickly. Jude Hill and Lewis McCaskey, who played Will, his older brother, they got to be very sort of filial and fraternal immediately. So did Lara McDonnell, who plays Moira, this sort of cousin. And And that, frankly, one of the elements of lockdown, which was the bubble in which people had to live, was very good for engendering a sense of family, which was so key to what we were after, and this film benefited from it. We knew that we wouldn't quite find the real place in Belfast because it's 50 years on and not in the UK, so it was the gift was to be able to build it with real specificity. Size of houses, size of rooms, you know, the width of the street, and then to be able to shoot it every which way. If you're on location in a real place, you have to buy the place out. There are endless logistical problems that can happen. When you build something, you just get a sense of freedom, you get a sense of control. You can create, you can paint pictures in a different way. So it doesn't have to be that big, because the world of visual effects can allow you to expand it a bit if you have the money and the budget. And so I was able to do something that was both built on specific reference of what that specific street looked like, and also how Buddy saw it. When I first went back to the street I was brought up in Belfast, I said, but this is a street for very small people. Forgetting that when I'd lived in it, I was a very small person, so it had seemed enormous to me. So I didn't have to make it quite literal, but everything imaginative that struck the eyes and ears of a 10-year-old is in that set. That's what Jim Clay helped build, and it allowed us to be tremendously flexible in the shooting. If it's curious about black and white, when we see pictures, when we see a sort of Cartier-Bresson picture, you know, a black and white still, somehow it sort of bespeaks additional authenticity, additional reality, and yet it is not the way we personally see the world, which would be more sort of encyclopedic color. It's a curious paradox that you get a grittier and more realistic effect from a poetic treatment. And so this was something that I knew I wanted to be part of the sort of mythology of this story. And it's different. There's a Hollywood black and white, and there's what I would call a sort of European black and white. And the European black and white, on the whole, it has a more sort of sometimes emaciated quality. It has its own sort of particular beauties. But it was the Hollywood black and white that kind of branded itself on my imagination. Well, speed, we were working, inevitably it just doesn't matter what the situation is, there's never enough time and there's never enough money to sort of meet what your imagination suddenly thinks is required. It's not like you want to be profligate, but sometimes that's just how it seems. So rapport, you know, shorthand with people you've worked with before, an understanding of, you know, visual sensibilities, the way you like to frame things. I particularly have developed by now a sort of fairly clear sense of how I like to frame things. Hopefully not the same every time, but it's quite a strong taste sometimes. Thank God it is shared and indeed developed and enhanced by Harris Sambalukos. I've been very lucky with my photographic collaborators over the years. And Jim Clay, so you give him an idea and he runs with it, they come back knowing that they have a degree of freedom that is clear based on previous experience. You know, they know what they can run with and what they perhaps need to run by me. They know I'm pretty good at decisions and relatively clear about what I want. The film is really about that. It's about an understanding, and it isn't a complete understanding. It's merely a sort of in the current state of knowledge, and the knowledge is not just intellectual. It's knowledge of the heart, of who you are and where you came from and how those things add up, and that an acknowledgement of it is. Can be very powerful, certainly not just for yourself, because if it's only for yourself, really write something down or have a, have a good think about it. But if you believe that there could be something that is powerfully recognizable to other people, then it may be worth sharing that story. And in this case, I thought it was. So inevitably, you go through a very sort of full experience of it. Which is often, yes, one of the things I think I've learned to do on this is be very happy about being emotional and, you know, crying a great deal of the time. But often it's to do with recognition and on a profound level, gratitude. I think it is sometimes presumptuous to sort of hope that audiences will take anything particular away. I hope they'll be entertained. I think there's a spirit In Belfast, there's a spirit and a vitality in the place itself that I hope is reflected in this film. And I think it's a spirit and a vitality and a humor, which I think is very life-affirming. And I hope that people feel that the joy and sometimes the sorrows of what happens in that city, and in this particular case in the life of this family in this street, are something that they can recognize and perhaps sympathize with, be compassionate about, and to some extent, you know, be consoled when it comes to some of the difficult decisions in their own lives, perhaps to see, you know, in that famous phrase, you know, we read to know that we are not alone. In stories like this, maybe we understand that we are not alone when we look at these reflections of other lives. And if that was the case, I'd be thrilled.
Thanks for watching. Make sure to like and comment on the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell to be notified when new videos are released.